Sorry if there's a lot of explosions in the background. I'm trying to record this, but there are so many fireworks because it's the last day of Christmas and the people here they have no boundaries. Okay. Sorry if there's a lot of explosions in the background. I'm trying to record in between them. Okay. I need to give you guys a warning because after the episode recap and review, I will have a very important side note that I hope all of you will take the time to listen to. Some parts may be triggering, so proceed to that with caution. As is tradition, we start with a recap and intro that is far too long. They even extend the intro to show them all standing in their respective ranks. Nana standing alone in our rank did make me giggle a bit. This episode, we're diving into the unit station, which has 2 rounds. The first round is the position battle we talked about last episode, where the girls will pick between vocal, performance, or visual units and battle it out within the teams for 1 advancement each. This episode is named Rival, and I am already over it. Manufacturing rivalries for drama this late in the game? We're just desperate now. At the beginning of the episode, they gathered the pre-promotion ceremony girls and lay out the station for them, and the one part that really stuck with me is how they've decided to frame Sowon recently. They tell them the promotion rules and then show Sowon looking frustrated and lamenting that only promoting 1 person is too little. So then they split the girls into 3 units to race to get their picture on the board, starting with the girls that were promoted to S tier already, then the M tier girls who won their battles, and finally the rest. In the performance team, the most coveted team, we have Narumi, Niji, Itoda Yui, Yuri, Jeon Jin-young, Bae Yeram, Kim Soo-bin, Jaela, Bae Haram, and Gu Gyeoryeon. In the visual team, we have Nana, Ho Seun-bin, Hwang Si-in, Yona, Kwon In-hyun, Kotoko, Gabi, Jang Soo-ah, Oh Yuna, and Kim Soo-min. And in the vocal team, we have Jelly Danka, Bang Yuna, Kim Soo-jin, Lee Sun-woo, Alicia, Im So-won, Minari, Lee Hoo-ran, Lee Eun-chae, and Jin Hyun-ju. Funny how each team managed to have 2 eliminated contestants. For the vocal unit, we have Hyun-ju instigating a question of who they each think is main vocal material. Me personally, this question was fed to them by the producers, no doubt. Sowon and Yoonha nominate Sun-woo, while Sun-woo herself nominates Yoonha. Yoonha, the unicorn, announces they will be performing 101's Beautiful. Now, is this the right song for a vocal unit? Are there better songs to show off their vocals? Should the producers be looking at jail time for even approving this? All yes to me. Then they cut to the visual team where we are greeted by the producers immediately shoving Hwang Si-in, Nana, and Kotoko in our faces. I wonder who they might want as the visual in the final lineup. Interestingly, as they discuss what the visual skill even is, Gabi suggests that it's someone who is eye-catching and memorable, and I'm inclined to agree. It's the explanation that makes the most sense, at least. Sejong then announces they will be performing Orange Caramel's Catalina, and Nana determines she and Kotoko will be rivals on this team. Almost like that's the theme of the episode or something. When we meet the performance unit again, we're immediately thrown into them showing off tricks such as flips and jumps. Then Hyoyeon announces they will be performing Itzy's Loco as a remix. We begin with the visual unit. So immediately I thought I had with the visual unit is it feels like they want to get rid of Gabi via voting. Just think about it. After that heavy edit of her depressed in Girls on Top, we literally haven't seen her except for that one comment about what the visual team is about. Nana is assigned a lot of important parts in the performance, while Kotoko also got a lot of parts, but not really any of the ones she wants. This is still prior to the elimination, by the way. I'm too tired to get into the forced rivalry between Nana and Kotoko because it's like, oh my god, we get it at this point. I'm just gonna move on to my thoughts on the recording process. To start, I don't think Catalina is a vocal-focused song, but it's definitely a song that will separate the singers with a good sense for how to use their voice and those without. For example, I think Kotoko's vocal tone is an asset here when used correctly, since it's very childlike in a lot of ways, but the producers, both the song and the show producers, are too biased to know how to do that. They just want to give her the cute choreo moments. When you have a voice like hers that has potential but is really unrefined, you don't want it overtaking the song, but just adding a punch to it. However, Sumin, now that is a girl who is ready to debut. She knows exactly how to use her voice to express the feeling of the original song. The cheeky frustration comes through without sounding like she's trying to emulate the original. This is what I mean by separating those with sense from those without. Everybody reduces this song to just a quirky, cute song, but there are so many layers to it, which is why less experienced performers and singers can make it feel soulless. If you're not ready to commit to it, then you're not ready to perform this song, or as an example, Uchisono Chokomi's songs. They do like a midterm evaluation where they perform in front of the other teams and the girls evaluate who they think will be promoted and who won't. In my opinion, from this midterm evaluation, my expectations for Kotoko in this performance dropped immensely because she doesn't really have the stage charisma to pull it off. She has all these standout parts but just doesn't commit to all of them. It was disappointing. Nana and Sumin, in my opinion, were putting in the work the song needed. Ultimately, the girls ranked them with Oh Yuna being the only one to not get any votes, positive or negative. Yona received 1 no, Hwang Si-in got 2 no's, Ho Seun-bin got 3, and Jang Soo and Kwon In-hyun got 5. Gabi got 1 promotion and 4 no's, while Sumin got 2 promotions, Nana got 8, and Kotoko got 9. After the elimination, they attend a beauty day with a Korean beauty YouTuber, and I was just about to skip past it because I don't care about in-show advertisements when I noticed she put a foundation about 3 shades lighter than Sheehan's skin on her and started talking about how her skin was glowing? This is the industry people want these poor impressionable children debuting into. Sheehan is 14. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. On to the performance. The remix is interesting, I'll give them that. Immediately, it is so noticeable that the producers treated this group like a trio with background vocals, as Nana, Sumin, and Kotoko got an overwhelming amount of parts. I wasn't the only person who noticed Kotoko might have had some heavy backtrack making up for her during at least her first parts. Sheehan and Yuna I felt did well, but their tones were wrong. They were channeling the wrong emotion on stage. Meanwhile, Suman and Yuna saved this performance vocally. In my opinion, they were the only people on that stage that knew how to use their voices to enhance the performance, which made the other girls' voices stick out even more. And with it came greater stage presence. The bridge/final chorus bit just had way too much going on between Nana on lead, Kotoko on delay, and Sumin doing a high note ad-lib. Pretty much anyone else on this stage would have been a better choice for the delay to achieve a better blend of tones. Sumin, Yona, and Gabi were my standouts for this performance. While Sumin and Yona had the whole performance package going on, Gabi's stage presence was on the whole time and she knew how to sell the song despite her very few lines. I don't think her tone was right, but she got the feeling down. Nana, I feel, fell into the same trap as Alicia and whatever, where they just had way too many parts to focus on and it ultimately detracted from the overall performance. While Kotoko received the promotion and advanced to I tier, you cannot convince me that Sejong didn't vote for Sumin. I can feel the truth of that down to my very bones. I don't think she's really willing to let the contestants coast on potential and cuteness anymore. She knows how close we are to the finale, and I think her survival show instinct is kicking in. Not to get off on a tangent, but Sejong was literally part of the blueprint for survival shows, and pretty much everybody agrees that IOI is the most well-rounded project group with only 1 member who got in on the personality vote. But they also had 11 members, while this group will have 8. Maybe it's just the editing, but I could see reservation taking place in her when it came to who to promote, and a divide between her and the others on this unit in particular. I'm pretty sure this is their last chance to affect the final lineup, and I can't blame her for campaigning for someone as well-rounded as Sumin when Kotoko has a good chance of making the lineup on votes alone. On to the vocal unit. Sowon got type A influenza on the first day of practice. Even grown idols were taking health hiatuses after being diagnosed with this. I cannot imagine the havoc this was raising on her immune system. Shortly after she returns, they show clips of the girls where half of them are practicing with masks. Then someone struggles to catch up, but I don't get the editing here because for the few days, I think it was probably 2 days or so, she was off. They show that the other girls weren't able to work on the choreo, and that caused mostly the older contestants to worry about their standing versus the other units. But then they give a lot of focus to Sowon messing up and not picking up on the choreo to the point she just abruptly leaves out of frustration and goes into the confessional to cry. Now, here is something that bothers me. Usually, when you get to this level of frustration, you want to hide away, blend into the background, run to the bathroom so people don't see you cry. But she runs to the confessional and cries and laments with a camera in her face. I don't know if this is her own decision to get attention because she clearly likes having the camera on her and she does a lot of things to draw its attention when she's feeling more confident, or if this is some guideline from the producers. By that I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if when they explained the purpose of the confessional, they told them to come in there when they wanted to vent or talk about something, because the same thing happened with Anshin all the way back in Battle Week. But the older contestants might come in there and talk about their emotions afterwards, like Nana does. It just makes me wonder what the motivation behind this is. Anyways, if I was the producers, I would have just convinced Sowon to sit this round out, especially so as to reduce the risk of her infecting the other contestants. When she comes back to practice, her throat isn't good, and we found out Alicia had a cold the week before, so there's clearly something else going around. If your immune system is already weak due to having a cold, I wouldn't chance catching a flu, especially as the vocal unit. On another side note, did they not provide these girls with flu shots, like back in late October, November? I want to know. But basically, the producers know Sowon is already a lock for I tier when in this elimination round you just need S tier to advance, so why not encourage her to sit this out for her own and the others' health? When Sowon sits in the corner while the other girls practice, Sunwoo and Hyunju put on their leader Ani hats and go cheer her up and tell her to focus on her vocals and getting better instead of letting the choreo ruin her whole performance. And then Sowon shows up to the recording with an eye patch. An eye patch! How will these producers allow this child to continue to work on this stage under these conditions We need a child labor law expert to investigate. During the recording, we find out that Alicia is still sick, but perhaps she isn't even still sick and is instead fighting off a second infection that came right after the first. Perhaps because another contestant came to practice still sick. I'm not saying Sowon got her sick. We would probably know if the entire group came down with type A influenza, but there was clearly something else going around, and she wasn't the only member who might have been sick given a lot of them showed up with masks. That should have been hint number 1 to just postpone the battle, but no. We have to push through with one of the show's best vocalists barely able to finish a line, and the favorite so congested it gives the illusion of emotion. But, of course, we need the drama and the excuse to pit Alicia and Sowon against each other as rivals. Then, as if they couldn't get worse, they pull exactly what I knew they were going to do with Sunwoo now that she isn't the unit leader. A struggle edit. Seriously, the show is so... Let me be pissed off and rant for a second here. They literally edited together like 3 separate moments to convince us that Sunwoo was upset to the point of tears about Bang Yoon getting her part, which, mind you, the producers didn't even give her a chance to re-record before sending her out of the studio when they're all sick. But they gave Yoonha 3, possibly even more, attempts to steal her part. Now notice a few things for me, please. We know this has to be how they're sitting when Yoonha is recording because the producers say her name several times with this seating arrangement in the background. Now, where is Sunwoo sitting? Left-hand wall from our point of view, next to Hyunju on her right, probably Minari on her left, and Lee Eun-chae on her left. Then they cut to her looking upset, and suddenly Eun-chae is to her direct left with Alicia to the right and the other couch's wall behind her. This is like Chaiping all over again. And in another mix and match scene, they have Sunwoo on the arm of the back couch with Sowon next to her. These reactions are so clearly not to Yoonha, and if the showrunners thought they could get away with that, then they clearly haven't met a single Critical Girls Planet viewer. Justice for Sunwoo, release the real cut, you cowards. And if anyone is thinking of saying something like, well then how can you be sure that Sowon was crying because she said it herself, both at the time and in later references? These are far from being the same case. If I had to assume, I would think Sunwoo was moved to tears by someone recording, and I'm placing my bets on Hyunju or one of the eliminated girls. Huran didn't have enough parts, and the other 3 are the only ones I think the show wouldn't want us to think are capable of that. However, Eun-chae is still in frame, and I don't think Minari has the emoting capability. Would love to be proven wrong, I just haven't been by the show performances, and so that leaves Hyunju. There is a slight chance of it being Jelly, but I think the show would have wanted us to see that. But either way, based on how quickly Sunwoo recovers, I don't think this was her genuine frustration or disappointment coming out, since it would be a lot harder to stop those tears. Ergo, I submit the theory that Sunwoo was moved to tears by Hyunju recording, probably enhanced by her current emotions and physical health, but the producers don't like that narrative, so they decided to play on what worked with the whatever team. If you have any other thoughts on my theory, feel free to share. On this similar topic, when they have Alicia record, she, like I said, can barely finish her lines due to a sore throat. This leads to the producers asking her to switch with Sowon, and when they grant Alicia's first line to Sowon, they cut to Alicia saying she hates this, when another contestant seems to be trying to cheer her up. Do I think this was her genuine reaction? Probably. But I also want to take note of the language barrier because I just want us to be mindful of the personality Alicia has shown so far and that her Korean language skills are still pretty basic. Okay, anyways, time to move on to the stage. Right before the performance starts, Alicia and Sowon are still coughing. Vocal unit. I'm not going to let that one go. As the performance starts, I'm immediately underwhelmed. Bang Yoon has a nice voice, but she doesn't know how to emote, and this opening part is really delicate. In my honest opinion, this should have gone to Lee Huran. In my opinion, she was severely underutilized on this stage, and this intro part would have suited her delicate charm perfectly. I also think Hyunju would have been good for this, but she got her own highlight parts. Sunwoo sounded good, but something about her vocal performance sounded really restrained, and it wasn't until I rewatched their background that I realized it's probably because she's also sick. With that in mind, I understood the restraint was probably to avoid overexertion. I do want to add in a big compliment to most of the harmonies, like Alicia, Hyunju, and Jelly sounded so great together. On the other hand, when Jelly, Huran, and Sowon harmonized, I heard too much of Sowon. I don't know if it's because her mic was turned up more, it certainly felt like that at other points in the song, or if it's because she has difficulty harmonizing. I think my favorite harmony was the bridge, where it goes from Bang Yoon-na alone to her and Hyunju, and then the way Sunwoo's upper harmony just completes it. Chills. Also, Alicia's head voice high note she does with Sowon does not get enough credit, but I think Soojin would have been a better match for Alicia on that part. I genuinely have an entire plan forming in my head for how to rearrange this line distribution. I felt like the opening choreo was also just incredibly awkward. Even more reason to not have choreo for a vocal stage. Also, no handheld mics for a vocal stage because you want them to do choreo. I can't be the only one not understanding the decision-making process here. And why did they even record this song? Did they give the vocal unit backtrack? It's not like they're going to release this on streaming platforms. I can understand it for the performance and visual units because they're not focusing on vocals, but did the vocal unit have backtrack? SBS, the people want answers. Got a bit sidetracked there. I'm normal. I get very intense about vocal units because I'm very passionate about good vocals. Speaking of which, what the hell was going on with this line distribution? Again, the visual and performance units shouldn't have to worry about line distribution because they're both essentially performance units just with different focuses, but you mean to tell me you gathered the best vocalists this show has to offer, and not even all of them because some chose the other units. And I didn't even realize Soojin was there until someone pointed it out. And this is the one stage where she's allowed to be selfish and focus on herself and treat this like an individual competition, but she didn't get anything? How sick were they? Again, different focuses, but you can't judge a singer who doesn't sing. You can't properly judge a performer who doesn't get to show off, and you can't judge a visual with no center parts. This was rigged. Rigged, I tell you. Mnet probably had a really good reason for doing this part earlier in the season, and I'll lay them out. 1. More contestants, more concepts, more spotlight, more chances to prove who you will be in the final lineup. 2. It breaks the preconceived notion of a lot of contestants and allows them to shine in a way they wouldn't in a full performance. 3. They have the contestants themselves assign parts and arrangement and come up with choreo and write raps, which also nurtures their understanding of their role and makes sure everyone gets to have their moment because they can advocate for themselves. 4. You get rid of the less talented ones by judging them on their chosen talent early on instead of making up excuses about potential and letting them coast by on charm alone. This is not shade, I'm just thinking about how even though Sohye and Haewon were considered visual picks, the early position battles showed more of their dedication and hard work than any other round, so nobody rioted when they made their lineups because most people understood the appeal. Ultimately, Sohwon gets the unicorn ticket, but she was pretty much the only option. She had gotten the most amount of time to recover, and she was probably one of very few contestants actively encouraged to protect her voice during preparations due to having the flu and not just a cold. If it was me, I would have given it to Sunwoo for that final harmony alone, but she also handled 2 very important parts. Runner-up for me would be Alicia. She had the best emotional interpretation in my opinion. I also saw a lot of people saying Jelly should have done the outro, and while I can agree from a vocal tone perspective, I think Soojin would have been a better pick. Maybe one day I'll show you guys how I would have rearranged this. Also, this is the only unit where the line distribution is genuinely sabotaged, because it's not the line distribution that matters for visual and performance. Neither of them should really be singing live. For visual and performance, they should have balanced out the performance itself. Like, why the hell did Nana have to do that random red sun part in the middle of the dance break? It doesn't fit the song anyways, but why not give it to someone like Eunyoung, who had barely a second of lines? Anyways, it's time to get into the performance unit. Niji says she thinks Narumi should be promoted because she has a lot of prominent parts in the performance, but I'll get into that later. Like I've already said, I'm pretty bad at judging dance performances, so I don't have too many thoughts going on. But for the background, things get messy. There are about 3 coveted parts: opening, center, first verse split, and the So Dangerous part. By the time we get there, they've already assigned the opener and first verse, so we get to see the battle for the So Dangerous part. They set up a rivalry between Narumi and Niji, but they only really show Narumi talking about it, and it's kind of funny to me because you can tell the producers asked her leading questions. Stuff like, what do you think of Niji? And who is your rival in this team? And Narumi answers in really simple Korean, and it honestly seems like she's just happy she can answer the question on her own more than anything. It's giving foreign language oral exam. Anyways, those are just my thoughts on that for everyone criticizing her for having beef with a 13-year-old or similar sentiments. Anyways, they show Baeharam and Yeram, Kugyeoryeon, Narumi, Niji, and I think Jinyoung, can't remember right now, audition for the So Dangerous part, and in my opinion it was between Haram and Narumi just has such a good sense while performing. I knew it was going to her. Belle, the dance trainer, says she chose Narumi because she liked the way it came across with her tall figure, but she also warns her that if she can't live up to it, the part goes to someone else. Then the show frames it like she only got the part over Niji because she's tall, but I don't even think Niji was in the running like that. She's a very good technical dancer, but her stage presence is very one note, and this isn't just a dance unit, it's a performance unit. For the interim, Itota Yui gets 16 no's, overkill a little bit, wow. Jinyoung, Yeram, and Kim Soo-bin each get 1 no, Haram gets no vote. Gyeoron gets 2 promotions and 1 no. Jayla and Narumi also get 2 promotions, while Yuri gets 1 and Niji gets 13. Now, I, like the judges, was very confused when the performance unit started singing live. It's impressive that they managed it for everything but Narumi's So Dangerous part, but we're not really here to judge that. In general, I think the entire team did well. Most of them got at least 1 part to stand out, but some just suited the concept more than others. The promotion is then between Narumi and Niji, and Narumi gets the promotion to I tier. I saw a lot of people comparing her promotion to Sowon, saying of course she got it because she had the most parts, but that's not how you judge a performance stage. It was inevitable that Sowon or Yuna would get the vocal promotion because they sang a majority of the song, giving the other girls no real chance to be judged on their skills, but all of them were performing the entire time, and you can still be acknowledged for your skills even when one person gets a majority of the main parts. Allow me to expand. Kyoryeon also did the split part with Narumi, and as much as I am a fan of both of them, Narumi was just the stronger performer there. Niji got center for 2 choruses, which I would say are more important than any highlight parts because this is your chance to be center with all the performers doing the exact same move. She also got one of the unit highlights. She wasn't buried in the back while the spotlight followed Narumi like some people are acting. In general, I think this team was the most balanced, with Haram and Yuri being the only contestants buried in the back. Jayla and Jinyoung also got center parts, with Jayla leading the intro despite not being the center. Yeram and Gyeoron also had their own highlights, but much fewer than Jayla and Jinyoung. This stage was always going to be between Niji and Narumi because that's what the show wants, and Haram and Yuri getting buried in the back is probably no coincidence, but when you hear the judges' feedback, you can tell they were considering the entire stage for once, because they talk about more members than just Niji and Narumi. Rian, for example, points out that the Bay sisters for once had little to no impact. Do I think they would have had more impact had the center and impact parts been better distributed? Absolutely, they're very strong performers, but this stage they were just outdone by other performers, especially the ones who don't get as much credit. I mean, if you really think this stage was unfairly biased towards one contestant, just look at how the contestants evaluated them and consider what that might say about the narrative the producers want you to buy into. Either way, to me, Narumi and Jayla won this stage because they had the best stage presence and really embodied the concept. They want you to think Narumi is overrated and divide her recent vote converts to nerf her out of the lineup and funnel those votes to the contestant with the least amount of votes, aka Niji. They don't want either of them in the final lineup. Next episode, we'll see the final 24 split into 2 teams to perform 2 new songs and the second promotion ceremony, meaning we'll see both the 2-stage eliminations and get the final vote reveal. The last episode will air on the 17th, so the final lineup will probably reveal itself next episode. I don't think we'll be seeing much more of Eunhyung or Lee Huron after that. Now, is this video already long enough on paper? Absolutely. But here are some thoughts I feel the urge to share about the overall structure of this round and what it revealed about the show, final lineup, and individual contestants. First of all, other people have pointed it out, but literally a third of the final contestants can't even attend the finale. You have to be 15. You have to be 15 to watch the finale, but you can participate in it at 12. Do you guys think SBS gets the irony? This comes back to what I said about half the contestants having a bedtime earlier than the show airtime. I don't know at exactly what time the show will film, but I'm fairly certain it's around the same time as the show airs now, which is at 10:40 p.m, because the application announcement warns it will end late. They might push it to 10 or 9:30 p.m. so that it's finished before midnight, and because finales are usually longer than regular episodes. Kotoko's hair is an advantage so long as she continues to be charming. She could be a bit less charming than her rivals, but as long as she has that blonde bob, it's going to continue to draw your eye to her. I'm not saying the haircut is the only reason she's made it this far, because that's just not true, but it has helped her attract the attention of viewers and the judges. I'm trying to figure out how to put this so it doesn't sound like I'm hating on her or undermining her, but the truth of the matter is, she would be just as charming with brown or black hair, but she wouldn't stand out. The blonde doesn't make her more charming, just more visible, and that is the advantage, especially in the visual unit stage. The vocal unit stage concept suits a visual unit way, way, way more. It's not a vocal showcase song, it's a visual highlight song. I would compare it to Girls' Planet's Destiny stage, and that was a dance unit. I do, however, think this unit was the best choice for Jelly in retrospect because she just would not suit Catalina, and instead of highlighting her voice, this stage highlighted her visuals anyways. For the vocal unit, I have several suggestions for better songs, such as IU's Good Day, where they could show off harmony on the high note, or Through the Night, which is a really stripped down song known for being a good vocal showcase. Yoonha's Stardust, Oud Cloud, and Event Horizon would have all also been great choices. But in my opinion, the best vocal showcase would have been Red Velvet's One of These Nights. It shows off low notes, high notes, distinct vocal tones, harmonies. It has everything. The rivalries were so forced. Kotoko versus Nana and Narumi versus Nizi in particular. Notice how we didn't see any similar setup with the vocal unit, having the contestants themselves talk about being rivals. It's because we already consider Alicia and Sowon to be battling it out for that main vocal position, and now it's just about thinning the selection for Japanese contestants. Nana was already pretty much a lock, and now Kotoko Satoko is closer than ever, but they've divided the opinion on Narumi to promote a contestant that is not going to advance on votes, effectively cutting both of them off from the final lineup. The voting has closed by now, so I'm curious how many people they managed to enrage to pour votes into Niji and cut Narumi from their vote. I have rarely been as convinced of anything as I am the fact that Sejong campaigned to promote Sumin. I also think she was fighting for the other members in the vocal unit, especially the ones who did well harmonizing, because Sejong showed on Produce 101 how important good harmonies are, and she definitely values them. Yoonha's comment about staying in good condition is also a skill is the dumbest comment I've ever heard on a survival show. I respect her as a singer and a judge, but that is just... It doesn't get much more what the hell are you on about than that. It's not like they can control if they get sick. And what are they supposed to do about someone having had the most time to recover? You know what would have been the best for their condition? Letting them rest and postponing the stage. I usually like Yoonha, but that comment... The performance team had the worst styling I've seen in a hot minute, since the Bang Bang stage in 101 actually. Haram and Jayla being the only members in bulky jackets that buried them. I know a setup when I see one. And also, you cannot use the argument that anyone else would have been promoted if it was about technical skill, because Narumi got her impact parts because she is technically skilled and has a good sense and good stage presence. I'm going to keep being hung up on this because she earned those parts and she earned the promotion. It's not the same as the producers nerfing the vocal and visual teams. Even the other members of the team acknowledged that Narumi earned those parts through hard work. Could they have been more fair about distributing them? Absolutely. But this is the only unit where you can still, in theory, get the promotion without getting the most impactful parts. I also have a theory on how the two stage eliminations will work. So the opposing teams have to vote out a member of the other team, and they show a preview where it seems like Bang Yoonha and Jelly might be on the chopping block, but I don't think they'll be eliminated. Here's why. From what it looks like, I think they'll have the judges pick like a bottom 3 or 4 from each team, and the teams then have to vote among those contestants for who to eliminate. I could see them putting Yoonha or Jelly there for drama reasons, not necessarily because they deserve to be eliminated. And then I think Eunhyung and Huran would be the most likely to be voted out, if not there, then in the promotion ceremony. When people say this final group will be really limited in possible concepts due to age, the age itself isn't the only factor. For example, a lineup with Alicia as the youngest would probably be able to pull off something similar to Red Velvet's concept, just without the be natural and automatic of it all, because she is able to portray more complex emotions. I'm not advocating for her to be in the lineup, but the reason why I'm highlighting her is because I believe she is the only contestant under the age of 16 who has some sense for emoting. Enough to at least not stick out among the older contestants. But with a lineup as young as this show wants, they're going to limit themselves largely to emotions these girls can understand, such as concepts about first love or what it is to be young while you're young, but not even all love concepts are open to them. The group is going to have a watered down version of Weekly's original concept because most of these younger contestants can only believably convey happy feelings. I don't know how many people have noticed, but I've pretty much stopped responding to comments on these videos, even from people who consistently comment nice or encouraging things and engage with the content I'm putting out. I just don't get how some viewers will hear me say, I don't think children should debut, and decide to just prove my point by throwing vitriol and nasty comments about me and my content. I'm 22 years old. I can just block and remove comments that get out of hand. But you know what 16-year-old me would have done? 14? 12? I would have internalized all of them and stopped posting videos ages ago. You guys don't see most of the worst ones because I have YouTube hold all the comments for approval, but some people need to take a step back and just close the video instead of commenting. Don't get me wrong, I knew K-pop YouTube wasn't exactly the most wholesome community before I started making videos. Didn't think I was going to get comments that could be extremely triggering over Yoonhwa's ticket of all things. But do you seriously think these 12 and 14-year-olds on the show who burst into tears and are ready to give up just because someone else got their part in a song would be able to handle that? We have decades of testimony from idols who debuted at that age saying if they could do it all over again, they would have waited. Even Sooyoung from Girls' Generation, who debuted at 17, has said her therapist told her she's mentally still a teenager in her late 20s, early 30s because of the pressure she was under. The members were in their mid-20s and they had no idea how to book a flight because someone had just always handled it for them. The idol industry isn't a healthy environment, even for adults, and some people are foaming at the mouth trying to debut a 12-year-old because she can sing. And listen, I have never presented these videos as unbiased. They are very much my opinion. I try to be objective when it comes to judging their skills, but I'm still human at the end of the day, and my biases, like everyone else's, will ultimately come through. But I have never not acknowledged the skills of the children on the show. I just make it a point to highlight the 17 and older contestants because they are not less talented. I may slip up and come off as a bit harsh here and there, but I also think it's important we acknowledge that despite a lot of talent, in many ways a 12-year-old will never compare to a 16, 18, 20-plus-year-old. And also, being a child actor, whether on film or on stage, is not the same as being an idol. They are completely different worlds with completely different expectations, especially as they get older. I know you guys are here for Universe tickets specifically, but if you're one of those, we just need to accept 14-year-olds debuting because of the president, then you don't have to take it from me. Take it from the president. Jaemin debuted at 16 in NCT Dream. He has expressed regret over dropping out of middle school after his first year to pursue his idol dreams. He thinks his education and experiences are lacking because of that. Mark debuted in NCT U 1-7 and Dream at 16, but joined the company at 12. He has often expressed regret about joining the company so early and not getting to discover who he is as a person or experience what it's like to be a kid. Henry of Wavy joined SM around the age of 17. He has expressed that he regrets giving up on school and school life to chase his dream. Boa is often cited as an example for why it should be okay for Solon to debut at 13, as she herself did so as a soloist. On the other hand, Boa has often mentioned how much pressure she was under, needing to break into the Japanese and US markets as a young teenager while speaking neither language with no translator. She's talked about how lonely and isolated she felt and often expressed a want to join Girls' Generation. She also blames the fact that SM forced her onto diets and constantly criticized her weight as a young teenager for her short height. On top of that, she requires strong sleeping pills, so strong in fact that she got into a drug smuggling scandal in 2020 due to having pills prescribed in Japan and being ignorant of the proper customs the pills needed to go through when entering Korea. IU debuted as a soloist at 15. She has cited her difficulties with breaking into the industry at that young age as a source of many of her mental and physical health issues as an adult. She cites the criticism she received at that young age as causing her social anxiety and bouts of insomnia, as well as a constant need to work. I don't want to get too into Yeojin, who debuted in Luna at 14, because it will break my heart too much. But she came under fire last year for her dieting advice, influenced by her own dieting encouraged by spending her most formative years in the industry. She watched her whole world crumble at the age of 20 when she, along with 4 of her members, had their lawsuit to terminate their contract with their abusive company rejected. Thankfully, she's out now and, with the support of her members and new company, is taking steps to fix her harmful relationship with food. Most members of Luna have expressed having traumatic experiences related to food, exercise, and contracts. Sully debuted in FX at 14. She has expressed that debuting at that age meant even her thoughts were controlled. She said she was blamed for everything. In her posthumous Netflix documentary, she talked about how she felt like a product. The only sense of control she had was when she hurt herself, and she described idols as puppets up to the whims of their companies. Taemin debuted in SHINee at 14. He has expressed many times throughout the years that the one thing he would change about his debut was debuting so young. Aside from that, he also talked about how he felt like he was still lacking and not ready to debut, and he wanted to debut with members around his own age. With his most recent comeback, he was heavily criticized for sexualizing youth, despite the album's concept being a reclamation of his own sexuality, which was taken from him as a child. Hyuna debuted at 14 in Wonder Girls and withdrew from the group due to health issues. Not only was she surrounded by incredibly nasty rumors, such as that she withdrew because she got pregnant at 14 by a man at least 5 years older than her, she has later in life expressed her concerns for new jeans who debuted at a similar age to hers, such as worrying about their eating habits, their sleep, and whether or not there's someone looking out for them. Hyuna also released the single Baby at the age of 25, which most people agree is a blatant criticism of the infantilization, grooming, and pedophilic attention Hyuna has received throughout her career. The lyrics slowly but surely count down from 26 to 15 and even younger, with Hyuna lastly referring to herself as baby girl. Kim Chaeyeon debuted in Triple S at 17, but before that, she debuted in Busters at 12. Last year, while talking to Triple S's then maknae Haerin about debuting so young, she suddenly burst into tears after expressing regrets about missing out on so much of her formative years in school and attempting to give Haerin the advice she would have wanted to hear at her age. I need to take a section to talk about Wonyoung. Wonyoung, who joined Produce 48 at 13, who debuted in IZ*ONE at 14 as the center and visual. Wonyoung, whose group disbanded when she was just 16. Wonyoung, who debuted again at 17 and became a phenomenon. The most hated girl in 4th gen as much as she is loved and admired. Dragged for the least offensive things such as how she eats a pizza in an ad, how she speaks English, how she ate a strawberry. She's criticized for her weight and, at the same time, idealized as a goal among communities that glorified eating disorders. Crystal also debuted in FX at 14, the same age as Sully. However, her idol career came to an end at the age of 22 2002 when FX had their last release as a group, their Japanese comeback 4 Walls Cowboy, a year after their final album 4 Walls. Although Crystal has not talked much about her regrets with idol life, she has fully turned herself towards acting, and the adverse effect of the industry can be fully encapsulated in her adultification. This has culminated now when girl groups are expected to portray stronger, more mature images, such as Crystal's Ice Princess image. Korean child and adolescent psychiatry experts have expressed concern that these children are being made to portray overly mature or even sexualized images that aren't suitable for their age. They've also expressed concern about this appearing in the songs they're made to sing with dramatic and emotional lyrics they simply lack the maturity to understand, which we're seeing on this show. They've even gone as far as to say having kids this young on survival shows is a form of emotional abuse and that there should be legal limitations to how young the contestants can be because there's no protections for them. Other critics have also added that so long as companies insist on forcing these images onto these young idols, it is our responsibility as consumers to call it out and hold them accountable. They're also basically begging us to not make fun of these kids for their embarrassing moments on these programs because of the adverse effect it will have on them. If the industry itself refuses to protect them, then the bare minimum we can do as its consumers is refuse to enable it. This little section is far from doing these stories justice, and there are far too many to recount these days, but hopefully this gives more insight into why I use my platform to advocate against this backwards trend and why you should too. Rest assured, if anyone under the age of 16 makes it to this final lineup, I will not be supporting them, and it's looking more and more likely that 16 is the oldest they'll debut.